of humans and animals are woven in a fabric of love, trust, and dependability. Inspired by such thriving dynamics, the animal healthcare industry is committed towards the health of the triad, that is, animals, humans, and the environment. The animal health industry's core objective is to contribute towards the food security of the ever-growing human population. Healthy and safe milk, meat, egg and fish help to meet the daily protein needs of the rapidly urbanizing population. The goal of animal healthcare industry transcends beyond healing the pain and sufferings of animals. It significantly contributes towards the livelihood of farmers and empowers the nation's economy. The global animal health industry has evolved from being an emerging industry to a progressive powerhouse worth more than $60 billion and is expected to be valued at $75 billion by 2025. The animal husbandry and fisheries sector of India plays a major role in country's growth, contributing 7% of the national GDP and more than 35% of the agricultural GDP. The animal health industry of India is poised to be worth more than $2 billion by 2026. It meaningfully adds value not only to the GDP but also creates employment opportunities in R&D, manufacturing, business development, international operations, and other sectors. The Indian Federation of Animal Health Companies, INFAH, is a united progressive force of companies working towards advanced animal health care. Formally incepted in 2012, today INFAH comprises of more than 50 member companies representing diverse genres of the Indian animal healthcare industry, serving across species with a comprehensive range of pharmaceuticals, nutritionals, biologicals, and Ayurvedic products. INFAH was formed to ensure ethical practices and enhance the animal healthcare industry's value and contribution to society. INFAH strategically collaborates with various stakeholders for better animal health care. These include Indian regulatory authorities like CIDESCO, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, ICAR, IPC, FSSAI, BIS. INFAH has also collaborated with various ministries like Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Ayush, Ministry of Finance. INFAH relentlessly works closely with scientific bodies and communities for creating awareness on zoonosis and antimicrobial resistance. INFAH also plays a pivotal role in the One Health initiative, which is a collaborative and integrated approach to ensure the well-being of humans, animals, and the environment. INFAH is a member of global animal healthcare body, Health for Animals, and conveys strong impressions of the Indian animal husbandry and animal health industry at the global stage. INFAH also works closely with various animal health associations. Global collaborations formed by INFAH also ensure greater regulatory harmony across nations. INFAH believes in giving back to society through its corporate social responsibility endeavors. It stands by farmers severely affected by natural calamities. INFAH joins hands with local veterinary healthcare providers and distributes nutritional and healthcare products for animals during these calamities. INFAH is also raising awareness on the importance of egg and milk as a source of protein on World Egg Day and World Milk Day. INFAH has been recognized on multiple occasions for its contribution to the industry. Despite reaching many milestones in its growing and successful journey, INFAH's bold quest has just begun. Driven by its philosophy of healthy animals, healthier India, INFAH is committed to make a difference every day and in every way.
Good morning to all. On the occasion of World Zoonosis Day, let me welcome all of you to this new session. In this session, we are going to talk about zoonotic diseases, which are infectious in nature and are transmitted between animals and humans. According to WHO, these diseases account for 60% of all the infectious diseases, and that is why World Zoonosis Day is observed annually on 6th of July to mark the successful first administration of our rabies vaccine by Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur's works are known to all. I need not introduce on the same. I'll just introduce on the zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic diseases are diseases which can spread between humans and animals. So today we are going to discuss about rabies. Before I do so, I welcome Dr. Vijay Makhija, INFAH Chairman Biological Subcommittee, to say a few words, and then we start on it.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and honor to have an interaction with the subject matter expert on rabies today. So, on behalf of the INFAH Managing Committee, I welcome Dr. Gauri for this interaction on the occasion of World Zoonosis Day 2024. The World Zoonosis Day 2024 is focused on three particular items. One is the prevention of the spread of the zoonotic diseases, controlling zoonosis by managing threats for future infections, and designing a framework for preparedness and response to the diseases. So at INFA, our motto is to ensure healthy animals and healthier nation, healthier world. Our objective is that how we can make sure that through animal health interventions, how we can make sure that animals are healthy and humans are healthy in our nation. So, as behalf of the Biological and Biosecurity Subcommittee, in last few years, we have been marking this day a very important day for our interactions on the topic of zoonosis and how bringing the different subject matter experts for a discussion, we can create an awareness around zoonotic diseases in the public health as well. So this is our humble attempt to create awareness on the deadliest zoonotic disease, rabies. That's why we have invited a subject matter expert to enlighten our members and the stakeholders of the animal health sector that what interventions can be done to minimize the zoonotic impact of rabies, which is such a deadly disease. So with this, I welcome you all for this interaction with Dr. Gauri. Over to you, Dr. Nitin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. Let me just, in very brief words, introduce Dr. Gauri, who needs no introduction. We are going to talk about rabies, a very relevant disease as per the zoonosis. Dr. Gauri Yale is a veterinarian. She's a master's in veterinary public health and a PhD in rabies epidemiology. She has been working since September 2016 as a scientific advisor of Mission Rabies. She has been actively involved in various efforts to reduce on the rabies in the country, and today she is treated as an expert. She has been an advisory member of WHO on this aspect. She is stationed in Goa and she works primarily for control of rabies from Goa. It will be good to hear all her experiences on rabies on the day of World Zoonosis Day. So over to Dr. Gauri for her deliberations.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin. I'll be sharing my screen for my presentation now. Visible, correct?
Yeah, you need to go full screen mode. Done.
It should be okay now.
Yeah, good to go.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are and what time you're watching this presentation. I am Dr. Gauri Yale, as Dr. Nitin already introduced me. I'm a veterinarian with a specialization in veterinary public health, and I've been working on rabies for the past 14 years. And I am very happy to have had this opportunity with INFAH to present on rabies on this World Zoonosis Day. So the topic of my presentation is, can we control the deadliest zoonotic disease? Before we go into rabies, what is zoonosis? So zoonosis are diseases that are transmitted from animals to human beings. And there's no surprise that there are so many diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans because we're not very different from animals. In fact, if animals could speak, they would be celebrating World Zooanthroponosis Day. Those are diseases that can be transmitted from people to animals. So we with animals share around 70% of all the organisms that cause diseases in the world. So most of us are mammals, so these diseases transmit from each other. And the problem is that diseases that humans succumb to have a far more economic and social impact. So how did World Zoonosis Day start? So all of you have heard of Louis Pasteur in school and college for various reasons. Louis Pasteur is a French scientist, a microbiologist, who is very well known for his, firstly, for pasteurization. So he developed a technique called pasteurization, where you heat a liquid or a substance to a high temperature for a long duration, which kills microbes. Now, this technique was used in the wine industry in the 1800s, and it helped ferment wine without contamination. Today, we use this technique for pasteurizing milk so that milk doesn't spoil and we can keep it on the shelf longer. Similarly, Louis Pasteur was known for the Pasteur pipette. If you've ever taken chemistry in school and college, you would have used the pipette. And also the swan neck flask, where a glass flask with a long neck was used for his spontaneous generation theory, to be precise. He is very well known for vaccine development for fowl cholera, anthrax, and rabies, which we will be talking about today. So, the years leading up to the development of the first human rabies vaccine, Emil Roux, Pasteur's colleague, the two of them were working on developing a vaccine for animals for many years. So, what they did was they injected rabbits with the rabies virus and waited for the disease to develop. And once there were clear signs of rabies in the rabbit, they would euthanize it and take the spinal cord of the rabbit and process it to make the next inoculation. So this was repeated, which is called passages. And what this does to the virus is it creates immunity in the animal that it has been injected without causing disease. So in 1885, this was ready, and Pasteur and Roux were using it successfully in their experiment set up with dogs. And Joseph Meister in July was presented to them with a wolf bite, if I remember, not a dog bite. So his parents wanted to give the poor boy a chance because if he was bitten by a rabid animal, it was sooner or later that he would succumb to rabies. But it was worth trying this vaccine, which was actually developed for animals. So Pasteur and Roux managed to convince Dr. Jacques Joseph Grancher, who is a physician, because the two of them are not doctors, they're both microbiologists. They needed a doctor to inject the vaccine into Joseph Meister. So on that Monday morning, on the 6th of July in 1885, Joseph Meister became the first person to receive a human rabies vaccine. Now the boy survived. Had a good life. And only died at the age of 65. And the story goes that Joseph Meister worked in Louis Pasteur Institute for most of his life. And when the Germans invaded France and they were attacking the institute and wanted to get into the vault, the crypt where Louis Pasteur's remains were stored and his belongings were stored, Joseph Meister protected the vault. And unfortunately later committed suicide because he thought that the Nazis had occupied France. So that's a bit of Joseph Meister's life. And what happened after the successful vaccination of this boy? So Louis Pasteur gained a lot of popularity and a lot of funding to expand this vaccine and treatment across the globe. So Pasteur Institutes were started across the world in the United States, in India, in Asia. And the first vaccine that was developed had 21 doses. So this photo is from the Smithsonian Museum. in the United States, and this was how the vaccine looked when it reached the clinics or hospitals where they were willing to give the vaccine. This photo on the left at the bottom is of Dr. Albert Calmet. The two children on his side are the first Vietnamese children in Saigon, current-day Ho Chi Minh City, in Vietnam. They received the vaccine a few years after Joseph Meister did. So around 5 to 6 years after 1885, the first dose, this 21-dose vaccine was available quite popularly. Now, in the early 1900s, David Semple in Kasoli, Himachal Pradesh, then colonized India, modified this vaccine using sheep brain. Now, this vaccine was used for several years, maybe at least 100 years, until 2012, where WHO started to recommend not to use this vaccine as it is a nerve tissue vaccine and there are several side effects. Of course, today it is not used, but we have to give this vaccine a lot of credit as it has saved several lives across 100 years. If you are at the age of 35 or above, you would have either received this vaccine as a child when you were bitten by a dog, or you would have heard of this vaccine that was very painful and it was 14 doses given around the belly button. And a lot of people developed fever from the vaccine itself. So this vaccine now is not used, like I mentioned, and the new tissue culture vaccines are far more efficient and safer. And you need only 4 to 5 doses on either side of your, on either arm. And it's an intradermal vaccine, feels like a mosquito bite. If you see this image on the left, you see that it's such a small lesion where you can't feel anything. So with a vaccine for rabies, which has been used for 100 years, when people have spoken about rabies, people have recorded that there is this disease that you get when an animal bites you, remains mysterious even till today. So there are records as far as 1500s. Here, there's an image from the Spanish edition of the Discourses de Materia Medica, where people are beating a dog, supposedly rabid, because they know that this dog will bite more people and cause death. This image was later adapted by the Kitab el-Hashish, a medical Arabic book, again speaking about the importance of culling a rabid dog. Now, rabies is featured in ancient scriptures, in Hindu and other religious scriptures, where the the importance of dog as a man's best friend, and the fact that it can cause this disease and end life. Now, slowly, this mysterious disease, because you don't remember the time that you're exposed to it. So, if a person dies of or starts behaving differently due to rabies today, the exposure happened months ago, maybe 2 months ago, 6 months ago. Don't even remember that they were bitten. Or you might have been bitten several times, but you don't know which bite caused rabies. And sometimes people are bitten several times and don't get rabies. So for people to understand rabies is very difficult. And worse is the way that the disease presents itself. The virus causes a change in the brain so that the person or the animal will behave aggressively and transmit the virus through the saliva to the next host. And this is what viruses do. Viruses love to change the behavior of the host so that it can transmit itself to the next healthy host. Like in COVID and influenza, it makes you cough so that the virus transmits from your saliva, from your oral cavity to the next person through the oral cavity, through the respiratory canal. Similarly, like Toxoplasma gondii makes rats less inhibited to cats, so that then the cat will be easily be able to eat this rat, and the transmission continues. Similarly, rabies changes the behavior of the animal so that the animal will bite next host. Now, this fact has been used in popular culture way back in 1500s. The first concept of werewolf started. So if you've ever read any of say Twilight or Harry Potter or several other movies where werewolves are people who start behaving like a dog during the full moon day. As time passed, people also started to record that vampire bats caused rabies. So then vampires and Dracula started entering the popular culture with toppings of innocence and seduction, made the concept of vampires very popular. The Twilight saga is one of my favorite examples. If you've seen this movie, the person on the left is a werewolf, and the person on the right is a vampire, and both of them like this protagonist, the woman in the center. And it's werewolves versus vampires the whole time, and both these creative materials were developed from rabies. Now, in the recent past, you would have seen zombie movies. The first zombie movie is Night of the Living Dead, around I think around 1970s. From then, rabies has been again used with the fact that it changes people's behavior so much. And the living dead, think about it. The person has now got rabies. They're behaving very differently. They're scared of light. They're scared of air. You turn on the fan, it drives them crazy. They can't eat. They can't drink. They are feeling everything extra, but you don't know what's happening to you, and there is guaranteed slow death. It's awful. It's one of the worst disease for anyone to get. But creativity and popular culture have used this concept very well and entertained us for many years. Now, coming to the control of the disease. So, if you want to control this disease, we have to now understand where the disease actually is. Now, in different parts of the world, there are different types of animals, different reservoir hosts that maintain the disease. Now, to maintain the disease, the population has to be a small carnivore which run around a lot and bite each other. If an animal doesn't have the natural tendency to bite, then rabies won't be transmitted. So the virus has been able to settle in populations like bats, skunks, raccoons, coyotes, foxes, dogs. In this image, you can see on the right that foxes, skunks, raccoons are more popular reservoir hosts in the United States. In Latin America, it's dogs and bats. In Africa and Asia, it's predominantly dogs, and here and there, cats. Cats have not been able to maintain the disease within their population because they're more isolated. They don't hang out like dogs do in packs. So transmission is a little difficult. Now, this image here shows the map of the world. The light yellow you see is where people are not dying of rabies, and the green is where people are dying of rabies. Now, where people are dying of rabies is where there are free roaming dogs, where there are stray dogs that are carrying rabies. So 99% of all the rabies deaths of human beings that are reported is from dogs. The remaining 1% is usually by cats or maybe livestock and wildlife. Remember, all mammals can get rabies and they all can give it to humans. But because, like the way I described, dogs are free roaming and bite and run, have landed up being the reservoir host in our situation. Now, if you want to control rabies, yes, you can vaccinate every person who has been bitten by a suspected dog because you don't know at that moment if the dog is rabid or not. It costs a lot to vaccinate every person that might be bitten by a rabid dog. So you're vaccinating every person, or at least you're trying to vaccinate every person that's been bitten by an animal. But if you could eliminate the disease in the dogs itself, so if you vaccinate all dogs as much as possible, you remove rabies from the source. So then you don't have to worry about vaccinating people. Now, this is an ideal scenario. Yes, theoretically, this is the best. But is it possible? So I'm going to speak about my experience with Mission Rabies for the past 7 to 8 years. And Mission Rabies is a non-profit organization from the United Kingdom, funded by Dogs Trust International. Mission Rabies is focused on evaluating and developing tools to eliminate rabies in endemic countries. Now, when the team cannot physically be there, when there is no project for Mission Rabies to directly be there, they support through remotely through technical and scientific support. So their advisors and teams visit and are able to control rabies in more regions because we cannot always be there. Now, for example, in Cambodia in 2023 May, Mission Rabies, along with the Animal Husbandry Department of Cambodia and other stakeholders, vaccinated close to 75,000 dogs, 10 days. Mission Rabies is also advisors for Bangalore, Mumbai, and Kerala. And here in Karnataka, Mission Rabies assisted the Animal Husbandry Department to vaccinate close to 2 lakh dogs in a month of September, starting with the celebration of World Rabies Day on September 28th. Additionally, Mission Rabies is now expanded to outside of Goa, like I mentioned, two states, Karnataka and Kerala, and many cities who want to vaccinate cannot vaccinate the whole state, but at least can vaccinate the cities where the density of the dog population is very high, the transmission and exposure to humans is also very high. So our advice is to focus on the cities first, and then you can control the disease that is spilling over to tier 2 or tier 3 areas. Mission Rabies also helps with diagnostics, and they're providing laboratory support to Pondicherry, Guwahati, and Jaffna in Sri Lanka. I'll be speaking about the project that I worked in Goa, where I also live. And in Goa, what we did was we vaccinated as many dogs as possible. Now, before I go into the details of vaccinating dogs, I would like to speak briefly about the types of dogs that there are. Now, there are 3 types of dogs. Now, 3 types of dog population, not dogs per se. So, the first is confined dogs, which are this population of dogs are inside people's homes. Usually, can sit on a sofa and share a bed and are cuddled, and people vaccinate them, take very good care of them. They have a veterinarian. These dogs are not responsible for transmitting rabies because they get vaccinated regularly. They will not transmit rabies to their human family members, nor will they transmit rabies to other dogs. Now, the 2 other populations are community free roaming dogs and completely free roaming dogs. Now, this population live on the streets and do not have regular access to veterinary care. Now, the community free roaming dogs, the center, these dogs have people who care for them on the streets. They could feed them, they might pick them up and get them sterilized. They even catch them and give them annual rabies vaccinations. Some of them even get the DHPPIL vaccine. So these dogs are cared for, but they're not taken inside the house. But what happens in this population is if you are feeding a dog, providing it care, but not vaccinating it, this population is able to reproduce and transmit rabies other dogs. So these community free roaming dogs, the people who are feeding them have a responsibility of caring for them in a veterinary aspect also. Now, completely free roaming dogs, the last population, is the largest population responsible for transmission of rabies. Now, these dogs are fend for themselves. They eat out of garbage, waste dumps, waste food outside people's houses, maybe hunt low-flying birds, get eggs from wildlife, um, also slaughter waste, maybe market waste, hotel waste. So they have a lot of access to food, but they do not look at human beings as a source of food. Like the community dogs do. They look at people and they think, oh, this person might give me food. But free roaming dogs do not associate people for food. So this population is very hard to catch. So the focus to control rabies would be on this population. Now, what we did in Goa and in our other projects is we had 2 types of catching teams. There was a hand catching team and there was a net catching team. Hand catching team is just 2 people on a moped where you go into areas, you go door to door, ask people if they have a dog or not. If they have a dog, you inject them. And you also catch stray dogs which are friendly because remember, community dogs, dogs that are not afraid of people will come to these vaccinators and you can vaccinate them by hand. Now, dogs that you cannot vaccinate by hand, you need the nets. In Goa, we vaccinated around 50% of the dogs by hand, and the rest of the 50% were vaccinated by nets. Here, I would like to show a few images on how hard it is to catch dogs. This is a waste dump where dogs would run and climb very easily. It's very hard for people to chase them in these conditions. There's a rough terrain, there's rain, there are areas that is very difficult to pass. but our teams have been able to vaccinate several dogs across Goa. And to show you here, to be precise, close to 100,000 dogs every year. Now, when you vaccinate 100,000 dogs every year, you should understand that we are vaccinating 70% of the population. We are aiming for 70% of the population. It is impossible to vaccinate 100%. A lot of people complain that, yes, you came in, but this dog ran away. Yes, it happens, but we need only 70%. We also created awareness in public spaces, went to schools and educated children about animal welfare, being careful with dogs, being nice to dogs, not get bitten by dogs. And if you are bitten by a dog, what to do? We also improved the perception of dog ownership, created better dog keeping, pet keeping, more responsible dog owners. Here in this photo, you see a man. He has 5 dogs and he has a vaccine card for each of them. This was the whole project was possible because of our data recording system. We have an app that can be used on smartphones, and this app is used for collecting data and monitoring projects and staff at real time. We were able to, with the dedication of the Animal Husbandry Department and with the financial and political will focused on controlling rabies, Goa became the first state to be called the controlled area for rabies. This photo here on the right is Dr. Lopez, who was our nodal officer when the state was declared as a controlled area. Now, what we did was we vaccinated as many dogs as possible. So you see this graph here, the line is going up. So with the number of dogs we vaccinated, we try to get more and more every year. But remember, it's very hard because if you use nets, dogs will become sensitive to nets. They remember that if this vehicle comes, they'll bring this net and they'll chase us and it wasn't fun. So we will run away. So it's called being sensitized to nets. But if you catch by hand, dogs do not associate you with pain. So over years, it will be easier to use hand catching than net catching. Then children, more over the years, we educated more and more children about rabies, like I said. And with these two, vaccinating dogs and bringing up awareness, we saw that there was a drastic reduction in human cases. This has been shown in Mexico, Sri Lanka, in several areas, where as soon as you start vaccinating and creating, because vaccination itself starts creating awareness, because you're in the communities vaccinating dogs, people are like, what is this? There is a drastic reduction in human rabies cases, provided there is PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis for people. And there is gradual reduction in dog cases. That is the last vacuum. Now, this data is available in our Nature Communications publication 2 years ago. We published this with the animal husbandry and the health sector, where it was a One Health approach to remove rabies from Goa. Now, remember that every biting dog is not rabied. Probably 1 to 10% of all the biting dogs in a population are rabied, even less sometimes. But every person who's bitten receives vaccine. Now, this is a huge endeavor. Now, also while vaccinating dogs, we have to vaccinate as many dogs as possible because we don't know when this dog is going to get exposed next. So we vaccinate puppies starting from day 1 because if that puppy doesn't get a shot that year, it won't get a shot till next year. And technically for rabies, you just need to vaccinate 40% of the dog population. But because there is a natural turnover of the population, meaning that older dogs who are vaccinated will die naturally because of other reasons. And there is a new population that is being born. There are puppies that are not vaccinated. So to maintain a 40% average 40% coverage, you have to vaccinate 70% of the dog population. Now, since we did this successfully over 7 to 8 years, we saw a reduction in rabies cases. In this map over here, the brown big dots are 8 to 10 rabies cases, and the small dots are 1 rabies case. We have a hotline which people can call and report any dog that is behaving strangely, because people are not vets. They don't, even a vet finds it hard to diagnose rabies. Let me be frank. So we promote the idea of a dog behaving weird. And when people call in, our team goes in, evaluates the situation, and decides if it is rabies or not. Now, what we have seen is in Goa, the cases have come down to close to zero. But we still get a few cases in the north, like here, if you can see my cursor, you can see 4 dots in the north of Goa and none in the south of Goa. But in Karnataka, that is south of Goa, you see big red circles. And that's a heavy load of rabies in the south. And similarly, if you see north of Goa, that is Maharashtra, there is a heavy load of rabies there. Now, these two states are not vaccinating their dogs like Goa is. So naturally, there will be rabies in the free roaming dog population. And now there is pressure from this dog population, which is entering and mingling with the population in the border. We are still struggling with canine rabies cases in Goa. There was zero human deaths for many years until recently when one person started their vaccination but didn't complete it and unfortunately succumbed to rabies. The canine rabies, yes, the government of Goa is upset. We are still getting cases. After so much of investment of time and money and effort, there is still rabies in Goa. Now, what to do? Can we vaccinate dogs like we are everywhere? Yes, we can. We can vaccinate dogs. But if there was something to make this easier, it would be nice. So we need innovations. And standing on the shoulders of giants, learning from what people have done before, learning from history, United States, Europe, and Canada have vaccinated their wildlife population with rabies vaccine. So what they have done is they used oral rabies vaccines that were dropped from helicopters and planes into the population, and the target species, because the bait is designed in such a way that that species will like it, will eat the vaccine and be vaccinated. Now, Europe was successful in eliminating fox rabies. So they started around in 1978, and over the 35, 40 years, they eliminated fox rabies. Canada and USA are still vaccinated, and they are able to control rabies in skunks, coyotes, and foxes. Now, why not a similar vaccine for dogs? So there is an oral rabies vaccine for dogs, but the problem here is that you cannot drop it from the sky. Because if you do, then it will land on people's terraces or in the trees, and it won't reach the dogs. So with dogs, you will have to have people handing out the vaccine like a treat. Now the vaccine is designed to suit dogs. The texture and the flavor is such that the dog likes it, and the texture has to be in such a way that the dog chews it. Because if it doesn't chew and the dog swallows the vaccine, then the dog is not vaccinated. The liquid has to circulate in the oral cavity and touch the tonsils before entering the stomach. And when it touches the tonsils is when the dog is vaccinated. So here is an example of how it would be to vaccinate a dog using oral rabies vaccine. Remember, this is a busy road, not a very busy road. In cities, it is far more busier, which makes it even more difficult to catch dogs with hand or by net. Here is a street in Goa where they are using just the bait. The vaccine is only a liquid water. There is no vaccine in this sachet because we haven't had the permission to import the vaccine to use here. Here you will see that these two dogs, which are, we wouldn't been able to vaccinate them by hand because they're very shy, scared, and we would have not been able to vaccinate them by net because they would have run away or jumped over that wall on the right and gone. So I'll give a second where you can see this video. So see, so simple. This person, the first person tried to lure the dog, it didn't come. So the second person dropped the bait very casually so that the dog is not suspicious and walks away without looking at the dog. If you look into the dog's face, then the dog gets suspicious again. Another video to show. Here, this dog was impossible to catch, so we left the beat uh, near the road, and you'll see the dog that will come and take it. Voila, vaccinated. And remember, they're vaccinated for life, so it's easier to control the disease when the immunity lasts longer. So this vaccine has been used in Thailand, also tried in Mexico, Namibia. In Namibia, recently, 10,000 doses were distributed in very rural Namibia over 10 days. It's very important that I mentioned that in Namibia, there is no PEP for people, meaning if they're bitten by a rabid dog or suspected rabid dog, there is no vaccine for people to take. And there is no vaccine, injectable vaccines for to give dogs. So there is no tool right now in countries like Namibia to protect people from rabies. Here, FLI distributed vaccine dates in a region where if you were to distribute this vaccine throughout the population, you're eliminating rabies from the dog population permanently, avoiding expenditure in vaccinating dogs injectable or vaccinating people when they're exposed to bats. So a lot of budget is spent, like I mentioned before, that you're vaccinating every person who's bitten by a dog with rabies vaccine. You will be eliminating that cost if you eliminate rabies from the dog population. Indonesia was the first country to register this vaccine for the use in dogs. And Haiti used the vaccine a few years ago under the supervision and collaboration with CDC. So there's CDC, United States, and say FLI Europe. These countries don't have canine rabies; they only have wildlife rabies, and are active supporters of using oral rabies vaccine in dogs. Now coming to my first question, the topic of my presentation. Can we control the deadliest zoonotic disease we have? Is there hope for a rabies-free streets? And that's a question to you, and I'm happy to answer. And thank you very much for your attention on this World Zoonosis Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gauri, for a lovely presentation, which gives us a full insight as to how the disease is and how we need to go ahead with the same. We have a few questions from our managing committee and the organizing committee. The first and the foremost question is, it is 140 years that Louis Pasteur first tried for vaccination. In these 140 years, we have come a long way, no doubts about it, but still the eradication has not happened. Based on your experiences, why it is so? Because you are an expert of rabies as far as India is concerned, so we request for your views on
So what has happened is, as soon as humans were with the 1885 Louis Pasteur's vaccine in people, as soon as people could be protected from a bite, human rabies vaccine became very popular and started to save human lives. The same vaccine, actually, which was developed for dogs, was not used for controlling rabies in the dog population. So in countries where canine rabies, dog rabies doesn't exist, are countries that don't have free roaming dogs. So they've been able to manage their free roaming dog population responsibly, and hence they have removed rabies from their population and people are not under attack. While other countries who have free roaming dog population still are struggling with rabies. And vaccinating this ever growing dog population is quite a task. And 4,000 years since human beings have understood rabies, we are still struggling with rabies with people. It's very unfortunate. The vaccine is, like you said, 140 years old. And even till today, there are people dying and will also die in the future because of rabies.
In a country like ours, with millions of
Mhm.
street dogs and thousands of rabies deaths every year, it is
Mhm.
indeed a colossal task. So, do you have a roadmap to make, or do you think a roadmap you can suggest to make India rabies Mukt Bharat? Is it a
Um,
reality to come in days ahead?
it
What
is
is
a
it?
dream. It is my dream too. I hope to live long enough to see that happen. Um, it is possible, but it has to be a coordinated effort throughout the country. Like what is happening with Goa. Goa has controlled it, but Maharashtra and Karnataka haven't. Now that if Goa is fatigued by trying to control and gives up, the disease will come back. So every state has to take this responsibility of having prioritizing rabies control, and it can be done because the Kshaya Patra of rabies is actually in the cities where there is a continuous flow of dogs and rabies. So if we start controlling rabies in the big cities, like in Mumbai, Mission Rabies with uh, BMC vaccinated 26,000 dogs in just 5 days. Now, if such projects are done across India at the same time, um, and dog population is also controlled, and this is only possible by garbage management. As long as there is garbage available for dogs, there will be dog population. So if these two things are taken care of, we could control rabies.
Right. As far as we understand, we feel that there have been two things which government has done country over. One is
Hmm.
castrating an overhysterectomy for males and female dogs, and another is
Hmm.
vaccinating the dogs. Any other way that you feel in your experiences can help the country eradicate rabies?
So the thing is, capturing dogs for animal birth control surgeries, like you mentioned, is a very slow process. One veterinarian can do around 10 to 15 surgeries a day, and you need to approximately sterilize 80% of the population annually for 10 years to see a reduction of 50% in the free roaming dog population. Now that's a lot. It's not feasible to sterilize dogs at the rate they are multiplying. So sterilization is not the way forward for controlling the dog population. We have to manage the source of food that they are getting. And that's the only way to control population, according to me, because there's scientific evidence showing that sterilization is not an efficient method. Although it's a humane way, but it is not an efficient. Also questionable humane, because the quality of surgery and the facilities have to be really of clean and managed well for good welfare of the animals. The other way is to vaccinate as many dogs as possible. And like I mentioned, oral rabies vaccine. I think it's a very promising tool to try and see if we can control rabies using this new tool. Sorry, Dr. Nitin, I can't hear you. Huh.
Yeah. In your view, oral rabies vaccination is yet another possible way of reducing rabies considerably, but and it is convenient. I think it has long-lasting immunity also. But then why does the world and many of the countries have not adopted that completely, or they are doing it? Your views about it, sir?
So the product is very new. The wildlife vaccine was modified to be used in dogs because it's a little different from foxes and skunks. So the vaccine was recently developed for dogs, and in 2018, I think, and is now being registered in Europe where it is made, and other countries are slowly registering it. There is a little precaution that countries are taking because the vaccine is a live vaccine. which is designed to multiply 4 to 5 times inside the dog's tonsils. Since it's a live vaccine, there is some hesitance for countries to use it. But I think over time and over several pilot projects that some countries are coming forward to do, will set a good example for other countries to take it forward.
That brings us to the end of the question answer series. We had a wonderful session with Dr. Gauri, an expert of rabies prevention control. I hand it over to Dr. Vijay Makija to conclude the session.
Thank you, Dr. Gauri, for your insightful presentation. And as we said, our motto of INFAH is to ensure healthy animals and healthier India. And this could be one step towards creating awareness regarding disease prevention of rabies, because rabies seems to be one of the deadliest zoonotic diseases. So we thank you on behalf of entire managing committee of INFAH for sparing your valuable time and sharing your insights in the interest of public health and the safety of our human beings. Thank you so much. Good day.
Thank you. Glad to be here, and thank you very much for this opportunity.